Dr. Karen Hills Pruden, and you have reached another episode of Leadership is Served. And I have a treat for you today, leadership community. I have Dr. Antoinette Thornton in the building. Dr. Antoinette, tell the leadership community who you serve, your business. Let's hear all about you.
So excited to be on Leadership Served. I am Dr. Antoinette Thornton, the owner and founder of Innovative Options Incorporated. Innovative Options Incorporated is a behavioral health consulting agency whereby we assist individuals and organizations with identifying their inner strengths to maximize their potential to sustain positive change. We are located in Atlanta, Georgia. You can find us on all social media platforms at innovativeoptions.org.
So we're going to get right into it. So this is a platform where we talk leader to leader. And so you're definitely a leader in your industry. And they tell me I'm somewhat of a leader in my industry. And so how do you feel about the statement or the question, when are leaders born or created?
As a licensed clinical social worker as well, I believe that individuals are born through God's gifts, but I also believe that we are created to be leaders. So God gives us the gifts in our environment, because we're persons in environment, then we are molded to be leaders. And for example, early on, if everyone remembers the game, if you're a female, Mother May I, right?
Yeah.
That is allowing you to develop those soft skills, to be able to set limits, to set boundaries, to go beyond those boundaries. So when your parents tell you to do one thing, then you can either go across the grain to do something else. As you go through school, you have learned how to be respectful. You have learned how to interact with individuals, with your peers. You then at that point go against the grain if you need to attest to those boundaries. Then as you go into high school, you start molding to your brain starts changing, and you're going inside the world and say, maybe I want to do this. Maybe I want to do that. And then you get that positive encouragement from your peers and say, girl, you're good at that. You're awesome. Keep going, keep going. And then you build that confidence. And then you start thinking, oh, I like this confidence. I can do this. So your environment molds you to be a leader, but God gives you those gifts. And as you develop throughout life, then you become the leader that God had designed you to be early on.
And I totally co-sign that message. Absolutely. Because I had mentioned this before on the show. I am a people watcher, and I specifically watch children a lot. And when I think about the little citizens on the playground who haven't been in this world for, let's say, 5 or less years, your 2-year-olds and your 3-year-olds. And I noticed that there are 1 or 2 that when it comes to group play, who determine who's going to be on the team, they assess competencies like, I like you because you can hit, or I like you because you can run, or I don't want you on my team because you can't run or you can't hit. And then they also settle little squabbles among each other. And so they haven't had the years and decades of experience that both you and I had, but they're exhibiting some leadership competencies. And so I have always felt that it starts there. There's something innate within even us when we're young. And then, like you said, it is cultivated through maybe trial and error, maybe through experience. Definitely through experience, we fine tune what works and what does not work. And maybe we keep what works, and maybe we revise what didn't work previously as we navigate through life. So I totally agree with you that it's a combination of both. So let's talk about leaders in your industry of social work. So what do you think is the evidence of a true leader in social work, thinking about the pain points that you serve and the impact that you make in your space?
In the field of social work, I believe that a true leader, first you need the education in social work. Because I do believe a lot of individuals call themselves social workers that do not have the education or the receipts of their degree behind their name. So let me say, I think that's first and foremost. And then actually being in the field of social work and working with certain populations, I think is very imperative. Getting CEUs, continuing education for working with that specialized population. So say, for example, if you are working with individuals that have history of trauma, then having that expertise in that trauma field to be able to serve those individuals, I think is very imperative. Also, research. Research what are the best evidence-based interventions that you need to work with this particular population. As well, if you're going to work on the macro, meso, or micro level, determining which one is more effective. And I'm going to go back to those God's gifts. If you're in social work, really understanding what population in social work that fits your God's gifts, because you don't want to be in the field of social work that is not designed for your God's gifts. And then you're re-traumatizing the individuals that you serve.
Wonderful. So let's talk about competencies. So you're in social work and I work in business and human resources. So in business and human resources, generally most leaders, competencies that they need, some of them, you know, you need to have the competencies of leading people, preferably multi-level. When you get up high, you need to have the competency of being able to lead change, because every business, you have to be able to pivot, you know, based on external situations, sometimes internal situations. And you have to have the competencies of using analytics to be able to forecast, follow up, and monitor. And you need, you know, you need your data and you need your technology. What are the competencies of someone, a leader that's in social work? I would imagine compassion and empathy would definitely be too, but what are the other competencies that a leader in social work would utilize? And can you share an example of where you utilize one of those competencies throughout your career?
I think all of the competencies that you self-identified just now is also transferable to social work. I think that's the awesome thing about social work. But one competency that I will elaborate on today, I think, is trust, and then being an authentic leader. And with trust, I mean, individuals need to take responsibility for being successful outcomes as well as making mistakes, because we are actually working with individuals. So one of the competencies when we're working with individuals, they have to be able to trust that we have their best interest at heart. So that's developing that relationship. That's meeting the client where they are. That's making sure that the client is the center of, I would say, the individualized treatment plan, and that their goal is their goal and it's not our goal, but we want their goal to be. So that's ensuring that they are the person and their voice is being heard and not our voice as the social worker. And making sure that we are the change agent advocating for them. So advocating for the individual and the individuals that we serve is very important as well. An example that I will utilize is with Innovative Options, my business, I work with individuals and families and adolescents. And there was a time where, you know, a young lady was being suspended from school and just dealing with a lot of traumatic experiences. And the parents did not understand that. We're really being able to understand the parents' point of view. That's that active listening. And then understanding the child's point of view, which is also active listening. And then finding out what the point is of what their goal is to accomplish. And basically that's helping them understand what the school was, the school's message as well. So that's being a part of a multidisciplinary team to make sure that the parents' voices are heard, the kids' voices are heard, and then having that collective partnership with the organizations in the community so you can work together to be able to serve the family.
When you were talking, I heard not only as you are employing your expertise and using your experience and your education with your clients, but also somewhat of a coordinator with other services or other individuals that that person that you're working with may need, because you're pulling in individuals, like you gave the example from the school system. You're kind of a coordinator of, you sit and you talk to the client and figure out what their needs are. And then you also do referrals to other specialists as well. Am I hearing that correctly?
Yes, we do link individuals. Yes, we are advocates. We do link individuals to community resources as well. It's part of, case management, ensuring that they get the needs that they need. And if there's something that as social workers, that we don't have the skill set to be able to assist the individuals, we have community partners that we link them individuals to.
Okay.
Yes.
And how would an individual know if they maybe can benefit from going to a social worker? Or is a social worker the first person that they would reach out to if they thought that they needed help? How would we know as a everyday citizen that maybe we should talk to someone?
As a licensed clinical social worker, we can provide individual and family counseling. There are all types of different platforms that you can go on to. If you go to www.innovativeoptions.org, is a great platform to go to. And you can click the link and then you can ask for a free consult. We will give up to a 15-minute free consult, and that's basically asking questions about your day-to-day. So for example, if you're not getting up in the morning, if you're not doing the things that you're used to doing day to day, if your eating has changed, if you picked up weight, those are some things that if you are experiencing day to day, or if you just need someone to talk to because you have a couple of questions. I've been feeling this way lately, I don't know what's going on. And then we can do a consult, and then we can do an assessment after you schedule an appointment. And sometimes, everyone doesn't have a diagnosis per se, but someone does need someone to talk to. So here in the state of Georgia, where I currently am, we have the Georgia Crisis and Access Line. And this is a 1-800 number where individuals can call if they're having a psychological or a mental health concern at that particular time. And a licensed clinical social worker can come out to their home and they can conduct an assessment and determine the next steps.
So let's kind of pivot and talk about planning and implementation as a leader. So as we go through our business day to day, we plan out what it is that we want to do, or how we're going to approach. In your case, it may be how you're going to approach client services. In my case, it may be how we're going to do something within the organization. And we have everything laid out, and then we move to implementation, and then things do not work out the way that we had planned them to work out. We do not yield the results that we thought we were going to kind of yield as a leader. And so the premise of this question is, how do leaders bounce back after failure? I hate the word failure. I call it opportunity. But how do we bounce back, and how do you bounce back when you plan things out and you have this course of action, and it does not, after implementation, yield the results that you thought it was going to reveal, how do you bounce back?
I learned at an early age that plan is important, right? But also when you plan, the world has other plans, right? And when the world has other plans, you might have to pivot. And in pivoted, you have to have a plan B, right? Sometimes, not all the time, but sometimes when things don't go the way that I have planned, I'll always revert back to God. And then I look and say, what could I have done differently? What was the learning experience from this? And next time when I do something, how can I learn and improve or implement what I didn't know So for example, in 2019, I had a conference, and then in my marketing and planning today, it was going up until that particular event. Then I realized there was a particular population that I did not market to. Could have changed the outcome of the conference, right? So then when I did the conference again, then I said, okay, maybe this particular population, because you always want to be inclusive, and what are the learning pain points? And getting the feedback from others, because that feedback from others gives you that design to improve yourself and your product as a leader. So also having those steps, I believe, is very important.
I agree. And I am currently getting my, it's called the PIMP Project Plan trademark. And what PIMP stands for, PIMP is an acronym. So PIMP is you plan and prepare, you implement, you monitor, and then you post debrief. So it sounds like as part of your post debrief after your conference, you realize that you had not included that population. And so you made a note so that the next time that you would do the conference, that you include that population. And part of the PIMP project plan is that, particularly the post debrief, a lot of people want to go to implementation so quick. We have this idea, we have this goal, we want to immediately start working on it. But planning is extremely important, because you can put contingencies in your plan for the what if this happens. It will allow you to pivot quickly, and we talked about pivoting earlier. And then in the implementation stage, the follow-up and the follow-up throughout, the monitoring, which comes after implementation, but the follow-up throughout will allow you to pivot in the middle of whatever you're implementing. But when you get to post debrief, this is what we plan to do, this is what actually happened, and you look at what actually happened and create a plan for the next time that you implement it to yield the result, if you didn't yield the result that you thought you were going to yield. And so a lot of people don't spend enough time in the planning, the first P, and the last P, which is the post debrief.
Yeah, and that's a good point too, Dr. Pruden. And an anthology that I did with you and sister leaders, I implemented my model, which was the GRACE model, through the years of learning. And in the GRACE model, we talk about what are God's gifts. And that's really understanding how you show up, and when you show up to the table, what does that look like, right? And then being able to know that whatever your gifts are, God gave someone else some gifts, so then you can partner with them. And then setting those realistic goals and making sure those goals are realistic and measurable, and then connecting with the individuals that you need to connect with or partner with, and collaborating in them so your project can be really effective. And then the last part of that GRACE model that I developed is evaluation. And you're evaluating that within a year, I would say, but you're doing it in increments of 5. So 5, 15, 30, 45. And every time you evaluate, It's a step-by-step process in evaluating and making sure that you're staying aligned to whatever those realistic goals were that you initially developed. And if you were not aligned with those, then how can you evaluate them and make them more pertinent to what's going on that particular day? So yes, I do believe that, and that's that grace model that I developed that's within your book through the years of learning to be an effective leader. How do you evaluate? Because as we know, our brains do change, our experiences change, and we grow and we connect them with individuals, but we also have to grow and evaluate. And the way that we evaluate things when we're in our 30s and our 40s and our 50s look totally different. So we have to stay aligned to how we're growing and developing as an individual.
And I love that. And I am extremely grateful that the way that I evaluate things now at 55 is different than at 20. I am extremely grateful for. I love that. I love that. So let's ask, as we wrap up, I want to ask a question about gender and its impact on leadership. You're a female leader. I'm a female leader. You hear a lot of noise about the difference between men and women leaders and the effectiveness of men and women leaders. And so how, according to Dr. Thornton,
yes,
how does gender impact one's ability to be an effective leader?
I think gender impacts the way that an individual is effective leader is very important and very imperative. I would say as a young girl, as a child, my mother was my role model. My grandmother was my role model. But my father and my grandfather was my role model as well. And they poured in me different core values and beliefs that guided me through my developmental stages in life. Where my mother was nurturing, my grandmother was nurturing, and they instilled in me when I was a cheerleader, when I played basketball as a young age, you can do it, and nurtured me that way to be the person that they wanted me to be, that God wanted me to be. And then as a child, my grandfather and my father instilled in me the values, do it, you can do it, right? And just gave me that encouragement to keep doing it. And they nurtured me in a different way, right? And them nurture me in a different way, those values as I developed throughout life was instilled in me. And I heard those voices whenever I had challenges in life. I can do it, nurtured myself, did self-care through the lens of how my grandmother and my mother showed me how to do self-care to keep me healthy, but also that drive to be a leader. Oh, I can do this. I can be the best, from the lens of my father and my grandfather and my uncles. So I think the value of both is very imperative, but I do believe as a young lady, you need both because the world, you're going to interact with both. So my father and my grandfather, my uncles showed me and role modeled through the years of how to communicate with men and how to connect with men in a healthy way, and how as a woman or a young girl at the time, how you need to navigate and walk through life to be respected. So when you open your mouth and you engage, that you are seen for who you are and not who someone wants you to be.
I love that. I love that answer. And I agree that you certainly need both. One of my books cite my experience looking for a female mentor because early in my career, I assumed that I needed a female mentor when I wanted to go from middle management to senior leadership. And so I actually did the equivalent of a cold call, but except I did it in the form of a message on LinkedIn to a VP that I didn't know and asked her to be my mentor. And we had a relationship. It was transactional because it was a paid mentorship where she mentored me for a whole year so that I could, and she it poured into me the skills and different things that I would need as a senior leader. And I was eventually promoted to senior leadership, and I've been in the C-suite since then. But what I learned is that I sought her out because I thought I need a woman mentor, someone who's walked the walk. But as I navigated in the workspace, my main mentor was a male colleague, who was just the bomb.com, as the young people would say. He had the education, he had the experience, he had a active listening to the 10th power. He would sit, he would listen to you, and he would let you get it all out. You know, whatever it is that you're talking about, he had this knack for not interrupting you. So you would get it all out. And then when you were done explaining to him or asking questions of him, he would coach and counsel you based on his experience, his education. And he was one of the best, the best mentors that I could ever have. And he was a male. And I never thought that that could be possible. And so I now value the importance of having, I call them male ambassadors to senior leaders, you know, as well as having mentors of female leaders, because it does take both. And we navigate between the two genders when we're in the workspace or entrepreneurial space anyway. So like you, I totally co-sign what you say, it takes both. So we are at the end of our half an hour here, and we could talk leadership for a long time, and we'll probably bring you back later. But Dr. Thornton, I want you to tell the leadership community how they can stay in contact with you. If you have something you want them to support, a project, event or something like that, tell them how they can do that. So the floor is yours.
If you log on to all social media platforms at www.innovativeoptions.org, you can find us online, LinkedIn, as well as Facebook at innovativeoptions.org.
Thank you. And you have viewed another episode of Leadership is Served. If you're wondering why Leadership is Served is the title of the show, well, I'll tell you a little bit. Back in the day when I used to cook a lot, I don't do it a lot now, but I used to cook a lot. I used to actually collect cookbooks. I used to get my favorite recipe. And once you get a favorite recipe, you start messing with it. You start adding a little bit of this and taking a little bit out. And when I was thinking about leadership is the same as well, because leadership is always situational. It's always, you cannot be the same leader every day for different situations. You have to pivot based on what's before you. And so I was like, man, leadership is somewhat like a recipe. You know, you can add or take away from it as needed, except for you using competencies instead of ingredients. And so that is where the title Leadership is Served came from. It's really just a synonym for leadership is situational. And I want you to remember that you cannot be the same leader every day for different situations. So I am Dr. Karen Hills Pruden, and I look forward to seeing you on next Saturday of Leadership is Served. Bye.
Boss, Brand, and Business TV channel for exceptional professionals requiring quality and excellence.